card in the chat. We ask that you remain muted during the service and turn off your videos, except during the greeting, in order to help the technology work as smoothly as possible. We hope you'll stay for social hour afterwards. It's a great way to engage in meaningful conversations with people you might not otherwise have met. And now we'll begin our service.
Life is too brief between the budding and the falling leaf, between the seed time and the golden sheaf, for hate and spite. We have no time for malice and for greed. Therefore, with love and kindness, make beautiful the deed. Fast speeds the night. Please join now in saying the words to accompany lighting our chalice. We light our chalice as a beacon of faith, a sign of our quest for truth and meaning. We light our chalice as a beacon of love in celebration of the life we share together.
There she is. Emma, you're muted.
Hi, sorry. Good morning, everyone. My name is Emma Gaudreau. I am the early childhood educator at USNF, and I will be reading our story today titled The Surprise, found in the book Frog and Toad All Year by Arnold Lobel. The words aren't there for the story.
I thought you had the words, Emma.
I do have the words.
I have the pictures, you have the words.
Okay. Then one moment, please. Thanks, everyone. Sorry. I'm on it. All right. It was October. The leaves had fallen off the trees. They were lying on the ground. I will go to Toad's house, said Frog. I will rake the leaves that have fallen on his lawn. Toad will be surprised. Frog took the rake out of the garden shed. Toad looked out his window. These messy leaves have covered everything, said Toad. He took a rake out of the closet. I will run over to Frog's house. I will rake all of his leaves. Frog will be very pleased. Frog ran through the woods so that Toad would not see him. And Toad ran through the high grass so that Frog would not see him. Frog came to Toad's house. He looked in the window. Good, said Frog. Toad is out. He will never know who raked his leaves. Toad got to Frog's house, and he looked in the window. Good, said Toad. Frog is not home. He will never guess who raked his leaves. Frog worked hard. He raked the leaves into a pile. Soon Toad's lawn was clean. Frog picked up his rake and started home. Toad pushed and pulled on the rake. He raked the leaves into a pile. Soon, there was not a single leaf in Frog's front yard. Toad took his rake and started home. A wind came. It blew across the land. The pile of leaves that Frog had raked for Toad blew everywhere. The pile of leaves that Toad had raked for Frog blew everywhere. When Frog got home, he said, "Tomorrow I will clean up the leaves that are all over my lawn." How surprised Toad must be. When Toad got home, he said, "Tomorrow I will get to work and rake all of my own leaves." How surprised Frog must be. That night, Frog and Toad were both happy when they each turned out the light and went to bed.
Thank you, Emma. Next Thursday, December 10th, is the first night of Hanukkah. Hanukkah is a Jewish holiday that celebrates perseverance, the triumph of an oppressed people over a mighty oppressor, and the miracles of faith and light. Please join now in singing Light One Candle, which is the rousing song that was written by Peter Yarrow.
Light one candle for the McAfee children, with thanks that their lives did not die. Light one candle for the pain they endured when their right to exist was denied. Light one candle for the terrible sacrifice justice and freedom demand. But light one candle for the wisdom to know when the peacemaker's time is at hand. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through our love and our tears. Light one candle for the strength that we need to never become our own foe. Light one candle for those who are suffering, the pain we learned too long ago. Light one candle for all who believe in God and there will tear us apart. Light one candle to bring us together with peace of soul in our heart. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through our love and our tears. What's the memory that's valued so highly? We keep it alive in that flame. What's the commitment to those who have died when we cry out did not die in vain? Have we come this far, always believing that justice will somehow prevail? And this is the burden, and this is the promise, and this is what we will not fail. Don't let the light go out, it's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out, let it shine through our love and our tears.
And now it's time for us to greet one another. You're invited to turn on your videos, wave, and say hello in the chat. If you're new or newish and would like to, please unmute yourself to say hello and tell us where you're from.
And if you're not using gallery view, turn on gallery view so that you can see all the wonderful people on the screen. How'd you like that story? Thumbs up? Thank you, Emma. That was fun. Hi, Ellen. Ellen from Florida. Good to see you. Who else is from far away? Who else isn't from the valley? So wonderful, wonderful, wonderful to see you all. All four screens. 110 screens we have. That's probably 130 of us. It's wonderful, wonderful to see you all. And now I think we will turn off our videos and say goodbye to each other for now. You might want to come back to coffee hour, social hour. It's a wonderful time to meet new people, actually, because it's random. So the more of us who come, the more likely it is that you're going to talk to someone you haven't met before. And now it's time to say goodbye to everyone who's moving on to religious education activities with Emma, and we'll sing you out. Our first reading is from a book called My Grandfather's Blessings by Rachel Naomi Remen. It was published in 2001, and it's a collection of short essays and stories that come from her work as a physician and a healer, and also from her childhood. And this one is one of the ones about her childhood. Tonight is the first night of Hanukkah, my grandfather said, and so we will light one candle. He took up his Bible and opened it to the first page. The oldest story about darkness and light is the story of the beginning of the world, he told me. And he began to read, "In the beginning, darkness was over the waters. The Spirit of God moved in the darkness like a great wind over the force of the waters. And God said, 'Let there be light.' I was enthralled. 'Now,' he said, 'I will turn out the lamps, and there will be darkness, just like there was in the beginning. We will see what it's like to receive this gift.' I was very afraid of the dark, and the thought of turning out the lights was not easy. 'Will you stay right here with me in the dark, Grandpa?' I asked. 'Of course, Neshumale,' he replied. 'I will be here, and God will be too.' My grandfather reached behind him and turned out the lamps. It was very dark. After a minute or so, he struck a match and lit the candle that I was holding. It didn't give much light, and I could barely make out the menorah on the table. The rest of the room was filled with shadows. I held on to my candle. Pointing to the single candle in the menorah, he told me to light it with my candle. Then he took my candle from me, and placed it in the menorah too. I looked at the 2 candles and I felt a little better. Tomorrow, said my grandfather, we'll light another one. The next afternoon at sunset, we sat together in the darkness again. This time, my grandfather had placed 2 candles in the great candlestick. When he lit my candle, I carefully lit the 2 candles, first one and then the other, and he again placed my candle in the menorah as well. We sat and watched them all burning for a long time. We did this every day for a week. As the days went by, I lit 3, then 4, until on the final day I had lit 7 candles with my candle, and the room was filled with light. I sat back and I looked at the menorah with all its candles burning. It was so beautiful that my heart ached and my eyes filled with tears. It's beautiful, Grandpa, I told him. Yes, said my grandfather. But God's menorah is even more beautiful than that, my Neshumale. God's menorah is made of people, not of candles. When God says, let there be light, God is speaking to us personally, telling us what is possible, how we might choose to live. But one candle doesn't do much in the darkness. So God has not only given us the chance to carry the light, he has made it possible for us to kindle and strengthen the light in one another by passing the light along. Here we pass the light along in many ways, including giving generously according to our means and the urgings of our hearts. Your weekly donations to our offering support good causes and organizations as well as the good work of this Unitarian Universalist community. Thank you. I also want to encourage you to fill out the Hymn Sing survey. The link was in the Sunday Times you got on Friday. I'm pretty sure the service link in the email that you got today also. And our Hymn Sing is an annual tradition where the hymns that are chosen, it's mostly hymns, and the hymns are chosen by the congregation. And so Sarah Metcalf and Lynn Marie Wanamaker, who are organizing this, want to get a sense of what people would like to sing. It's not going to be possible to do that survey do that voting in the service this year. So they want to get a sense ahead of time. So I hope you'll fill out the survey if that's a tradition that you enjoy, or if you haven't participated in it before. Tell us what your favorite hymns are. And now, speaking of music, please take a moment to enjoy our offertory. Our meditation is a poem by Czeslaw Miłosz. I took a little bit of liberty with his gender pronouns. Love means to look at yourself, the way one looks at distant things. For you are only one among many. And whoever sees that way heals their heart. Heals their heart without knowing it from various ills. A bird and a tree say to them, "Friend." Then they want to use themselves and things so that they stand in the glow of ripeness. It doesn't matter whether they know what they serve. Who serves best doesn't always understand. Let's take just a moment together in silence. Our second reading is from a book called On Kindness by Adam Phillips and Barbara Taylor. In one sense, kindness is always hazardous because it is based on a susceptibility to others, a capacity to identify with their pleasures and their sufferings. It would be realistic to say that what we have in common is our vulnerability. It is the medium of contact between us, what we most fundamentally recognize in each other. In his novel Raw Youth, written in 1875, Dostoevsky describes a morning when people wake to find themselves alone in a godless universe. Acknowledging human vulnerability, they respond to it positively. Instead of bewailing their loss, they turn to each other, substituting human tenderness and concern for divine protection. Kindness in this story becomes a way that people experience their vulnerability, a vulnerability that tests the strengths and limits of their resources. Real kindness changes people in the doing of it, often in unpredictable ways. Real kindness is an exchange with essentially unpredictable consequences. Let's join now in singing together hymn number 146, Soon the Day Will Arrive. Soon the day will arrive when we will be together, and no longer will we live in fear. I didn't pick that hymn, it picked me. You're welcome to take its first line with you and meditate on its many layers of meaning. In this time of lights and miracles and waiting for miracles, this time of worry and hope, this time of continuing vitriol and divisiveness, along with pleas for building bridges, this time when the pandemic is strengthening its grip. The sermon takes its title from a line in the Christian Bible from Paul's letter to the Galatians. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. What is real kindness? What is its relationship to vulnerability and to fear? And if our intention is generous and kind, does it matter that the wind destroys everything we did to be kind? Do you think you yourself show enough kindness, enough of the time, or do you think you fall short? I think many of us, maybe most of us, think we fall short. As you could tell from our first reading, Rachel Naomi Remen had a special relationship with her grandfather, who was an Orthodox rabbi. And she tells another story about a time that he shared, in language that a 5-year-old could mostly grasp, a teaching from the great Rabbi Maimonides about levels of charity and kindness. There are 8 levels. I'm going to read them quickly. I promise I will not test you at the end. Level 8, a man begrudgingly buys a coat and gives it to a poor man who has asked him to do this. He does it in front of witnesses and waits to be thanked. Level 7, a man does the same thing, but he doesn't wait to be asked. Level 6, a man does the same thing, not begrudgingly, but open-heartedly and without waiting to be asked. Level 5, a man open-heartedly gives away a coat he has bought, but he does it in private. Level 4, he openly gives away his own coat. Level 3, he open-heartedly gives away his own coat to someone he knows, but the recipient doesn't know who the gift comes from. Level 2, the man does know who gets his coat, but the recipient doesn't know that the coat comes from him. That's the other way around. The man does not know who gets his coat, but the recipient knows the coat came from him. And level 1, a man open-heartedly gives away his own coat, not knowing who will receive it, and the recipient doesn't know who gave it to him. At this level, giving is a natural expression of our goodness, and we give as simply as flowers breathe out their perfume. So Raymond says that as a 5-year-old, it was very, very, very important for her to be good. And she said eagerly, "I promise I'll do it only the right way, Grandpa." "Ah, Neshumale," he said, "suppose we all gave to those around us as the first man does, begrudgingly, in front of others, waiting to be thanked, to someone who has need and who has asked us for help. Would there then be more or less suffering in the world?" She writes, "The need to do it right battled in me with the simplicity of my grandfather's question. Less suffering, I finally said, very confused. Yes, he said, beaming. Some things have so much goodness in them that they are worth doing any way you can." I share that story for all the times when we berate ourselves for not measuring up. Being kind, being generous, reaching out to someone in need. Acts of kindness have so much good in them that they are worth doing any way we can, when we can. And it's true that at times and in various ways, our attempts may fall short. I'm going to ask Emma, because I would love to hear the children's thoughts on this morning's frog and toad story. I'm guessing they noticed that from at least a practical standpoint, the friends both wasted their time. You may be thinking they should have bagged those leaves or dumped them in the woods. But both frog and toad went to bed happy, thinking with pleasure how surprised and grateful their good friend must have been when he came home to a tidy, leaf-free lawn. I can't help worrying about bad feelings that might have developed the next time they saw each other, maybe even the next afternoon, after they had spent the morning raking their own yards. If Frog happened to mention what he had done earlier in the day, raking his leaves in his yard, or if Toad was tempted to drop hints asking not so subtly whether Frog had received a nice surprise recently. Feelings might have gotten hurt, the friendship bruised. And there might be something here that points to the relationship between kindness and vulnerability. When we receive and accept kindness from someone else, we're allowing ourselves to be vulnerable in acknowledging that there is something that we need, something we can't supply on our own. And I'm not sure, I probably shouldn't say this, I'm not sure Maimonides is completely right, because sometimes when an act of kindness is done in secret, both the giver and the recipient are deprived of something important. They're deprived of sharing their mutual vulnerability, their need for one another, for understanding, for thanking and being thanked, and for being seen. This past week, for 2 hours on Tuesday night and 2 hours on Wednesday night, there were 6 or 7 of us who participated in a Sojourner Truth School workshop that was led by Pastor L.A. Love from Alden Baptist Church. There were quite a few members of his congregation in attendance, and he made sure that there was wide participation. There were maybe 40 of us the first night and 35 or so the second night. And because it was so interactive, he happened to mention at one point that he and I had talked about the idea of a pulpit exchange. Now, I had told you a few months ago about earlier conversations Pastor Love and I had had, including about our differences in theology around biblical passages on same-sex relationships, and about how we might be able to bridge differences. I hadn't spoken with him for a long time after that, and we spoke again very briefly just around Thanksgiving. So I do hope that we might come up with some concrete steps, and when and if that happens, have more conversations about them here. And again, whatever happens will take time. The title of his workshop last week was Combating Racism, Partnerships, Coalitions, and Reaching Across Lines of Difference. He started by asking everyone there to offer their own definition of racism, and as I said, he called on people. There were many definitions, and later in the presentation, he shared a slide showing in large, well-spaced letters, R-A-C-E. What do you see? He asked. It was a trick question. What he saw in those letters was a path towards decoupling the word race from its associations with fear and oppression. What he saw was a way to move the letters around, have the R and the C swap places, and if you do that, you get the word care, C-A-R-E. We need to care. Now, that was a very simple trick, a simple trick pointing to some simple truths, deep truths, religious truths, human truths. The question is, why should we care? And why do we care? And I think the simple answer to that is that we all need one another. As the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King once said, all of us are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all. We are tied in a single garment of destiny. And as I said last week, quoting the lyrics of the song, We Shall Be Known, it is time now. In this great turning, we will learn, we must learn to lead in love. So how do we do that? How do we learn to lead and follow in love? The news is that there are many exciting opportunities. I'm excited about them. Opportunities designed to help us all develop skills in listening and communicating effectively with people whose worldview and experience is different from our own. We're going to use a well-tested model in a version that integrates our UU principles. It's called an ally work camp, UU style, and it's an effort led by members of our racial justice and UNS The Vote teams. And I hope you don't think of any of these things as programs, but rather as opportunities, an invitation to participate in the Great Turning to help us ripen the fruit of the Spirit and learn to lead in love. So for this first Ally workshop, please don't be put off by the title, Work Camp Workshop. It suggests that some of this may be challenging. The work actually consists of very short exercises, ideally done weekly over several months, to allow people time to really reflect and integrate things, and to begin to practice approaches that will allow us to listen and communicate with empathy, to listen and communicate kindly. And you'll be able to do this with a conversation buddy on the phone or FaceTime or Zoom, or on your own. It's an experience. Let's see, what else? We'll have monthly check-in groups, and my fantasy is that 100 of us will do this. Consider that your invitation and your challenge. Many, many, many of you have expressed dismay about the divisions in our country, and this is an experience that can be adapted if you want to adapt it, applied not just to being a more effective ally in combating racism, but also in bridging divides across the political landscape between radical progressives and liberals, between liberals and conservatives, between Republicans and Democrats. There will be other opportunities running in parallel throughout the rest of the year. We're going to explore the questions and challenges raised in the UUA Commission report, Widening the Circle. We're going to have some educational discussions, topics. We're going to have book groups on at least two books. One is Mindful About Race, and the other one is My Grandmother's Hands. We're going to have focused work on legislative initiatives around climate issues and electoral reform, and more. This will all start in the new year. I'm hoping you'll have questions. Who, how, what, when, about all of this, and questions about the whether, why, and what of some kind of possible relationship with Alden Baptist Church. It's natural for us to want clarity, to want safety, to yearn for the security of knowing what will come next, who will do what, how it, whatever it is, will all turn out, and what we need to do in order to make sure it turns out right. I promise I will only do it the right way, Grandpa. And we're not 5-year-old, and we know we can't only do it the right way. But we can try to be kind, and we can practice using our minds and hearts to open our ways of seeing, to feed our spirits, in order to become more kind, to kindle the light in one another and pass the light along. This is something that has so much goodness in it, it is worth doing however we can, so that there may be less suffering in the world, so that there may be more hope for those who come after us. And now, please join in singing the beautiful Advent hymn, People Look East. Love the star is on the way. Let us know and show kindness in the season ahead. Go in peace.